Welcome to New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union. I'm your host, Sean. This is not going to be 2A related. It's going to be cultural related, but it's just kind of hilarious because, well, anyone in the 2A community who's been around the community for a number of years or any length of time has seen the Gadsden flag. If you're not familiar with it, it's the one that is yellow that says, "Don't tread on me." Well, there's a 12-year-old kid. His name is Jaden. I don't know his last name. He was suspended from his school in Colorado, which I would think that Colorado would be wickedly on board with "Don't Tread on Me" and the Gadsden flag. But this teacher is caught on film by the mother of the student, and what she's saying is dramatic. What the teacher is saying, I should say, not the mother, is dramatically stupid. First off, this flag is kind of anti-establishment. It's been adopted by people during the COVID stuff because anyone that was opposed to mandates of any kind adopted this flag. I have a T-shirt with it, an offshoot of it, whereas this little bitty wormy snake on it that says "No step on snake." You know, you would think that individuality, that rugged Americanism would be popular not just with students, but with teachers. You know, we're trying to encourage teachers are trying to encourage individual thought. And for a teacher to be triggered by a little bitty patch. If you wear body armor or you have the hat, this patch would have fit on any of those. It's very small. It's about the size of my FPC one, so it's probably about 2 by 3 in 2 inch by 3 inches, maybe an inch and a half by 2.5 inches, something like that. It's rectangular. But the simple fact is that this is now causing a national wave, and you're seeing people on the left chime in and say this is an outright racist symbol. How? This symbol was a Revolutionary War flag. You know, if you look at its origins for the Gadsden flag, there's a reason why it was there. It was to tell the crown to basically screw off. And for a kid to be based enough to wear this, and if you look at the news stories for him, you can see on his backpack he's got something that I think is funny. It says J-Rod for VP Revolution, and it says based. It looks like there's a couple other patches. He's got Cheems from, Cheems the dog, the Doge dog, because, well, Cheems is cool. And he's got this little tiny Gadsden flag. And the bag he's got looks like it's a camo bag that has some MOLLE straps on it, which probably offended them too if they actually knew that MOLLE gear is used by the military and by people that are training or hunting or putting accessories on their kit so that they can carry more of it and be more modular. This kid's little backpack has this little bitty sticker, little bitty patch, and it triggers an adult. Where are we at in today's society where something so minuscule literally causes someone to stop what they're doing and have to intervene, go through the administrative process of suspending this kid? The kid's probably going to make out like a bandit for this, and he's probably going to. He's admitted that he's going to do a sit-in in the school, which I think he has a right to do. They can't. There's something called FAPE, which is Fair Access to Public Education. They can't deny the kid FAPE, especially for such a minor offense. To me, this is akin to going to suspend a kid because he forgot a pencil, and you went through the crap because you couldn't deal with the classroom management, and you grabbed the kid and you brought him all the way to go before the principal or the man or lady, the person in charge of your school, and you had to intercede now. Now, how many times have we seen in just public pictures where kids are wearing things to school that, there should be, and there is, a dress code that are totally inappropriate to be wearing to school? Okay. What would happen if you're wearing the Progress Pride flag as a little patch? I doubt anything would happen. But this person assumes that this is a racist flag. And what's funny is in the video that his mom's recording this whole situation, she didn't blur the kid's face out, but she did record him in the background. You can see this kid kind of nodding like, I know more than you do. Because he knows exactly what the hell that flag is. So whoever his parents are, bravo to them, because they actually introduced a little bit of history, because that flag is a very good representation of what our founding fathers wanted and what they intended with the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment is exactly that for the rest of us on planet Earth or in the United States. The reason why they can't steamroll the American people as much as they want to is because there's enough people that have the ability to defend themselves and to deny them being steamrolled. We are not seeing people herded up yet in the United States. There's a lot of commentators right now talking about civil war. There's a lot of commentators talking about peaceful divorce. And I don't think either one of them is an option that can actually happen, to be honest. Number one, a civil war wouldn't look like what we think of. There isn't going to be one state lining up against a series, or a couple states lining up against a series of other states, just because there's resources involved here now. Our states, if you look at a map, their borders are made usually by natural features, usually rivers, till you get out west. Out west, we're just little cubes, and you wonder why. It's because they didn't really care after they bought it from the Spanish. And we have these places, like California, that rely on Colorado's water, and Arizona's water, and New Mexico relies on Colorado and Arizona for water, and Utah relies on Colorado, their runoff, for water to some degree. A peaceful divorce wouldn't work because of that alone. How do you share water resources? Or how do you, one of these stores, or one of these states could just block off the water resources to another state and claim it for themselves. And maybe they have a right to do that, but what kind of repercussions would that cause? You're talking millions of people downstream that would die. Nevada would die overnight if they cut the water from Colorado and the Mead River, or the Lake Mead. If they cut off its source to refill that reservoir, Nevada dies overnight. Well, not overnight, in a few months, because it's in the middle of the hottest parts of the world, or the hottest parts of the United States. Top that when you think about the civil, peaceful divorce. What states have nukes and what don't? What states have military air bases and don't? What states have military tank bases and proving grounds and whatever? How do those get divvied up amongst the state? The state claims them. Okay. Well, what happens if another state says, hey, we help pay for that? So I don't see peaceful divorce being an option. As much as I would like to, what I actually see is decentralization is more of a better thing. I talk about the federal government screwing us all over all the time, and I firmly believe they are. I also talk about New Mexico, the state government, kind of screwing us over too. But my local government isn't as bad. And when I say that, yeah, they have some leftist kind of things. And I say leftist ideas, some little woke ideas probably. But they have to play politics because they're reliant on getting their funding from the state and the Fed. So, there was a huge controversy in northwest New Mexico we're shutting down one of the biggest power plants that we have ever had in New Mexico in a time where we all need extra power. And it's because of the Green New Deal stuff, and because our governor is stupid and wants to enact the Green New Deal here in her own way, and she's planning on putting solar here. Solar isn't a bad plan. However, most of those components come from overseas. So how are you going to do that here without an extreme cost to the United States, or to New Mexico specifically? And what would be the benefit? So we can generate up to 6.5 hours of power, solar power, in New Mexico. I have no doubt of that. And we have a lot of land that's kind of empty and would kind of make okay for that. But what happens in 20 years when you have to replace all those pieces, parts that you just bought? You're going to have to reinvest all that money again. New Mexico is a poor state. Right now, we have the worst schools, or the second to the last worst schools in the United States, despite the funding that keeps going in there. And you have to wonder why. And I having worked in education, I can honestly say I know what the problem is. Is there something called the Local Education Authority, and there's something called the PED, the Public Education Department. And the Public Education Department is state-run, and the LEAs are all locally ran. Now, the LEAs all rely on PED for funding. And any time that the LEAs decide that they're not going along with the program, so to speak, they hold the funding in tow until they come into line. Now, that happened during the COVID stuff, where many LEAs wanted to tell the state, screw you, we're opening up, but they couldn't, because it was in no short order known that if they did that and bucked PED would censure their fund and would stop them from getting their funds. It's sad when you think about the local educational authorities having to rely on state funding, considering that New Mexico, Northwest New Mexico specifically, probably funds a good chunk of that stuff for the state. You know, we're not the biggest oil and gas producers, but we're pretty high up there. I imagine the South and around Roswell and around Alamogordo probably produce a lot of it too. But they're also not as woke as the 3 biggest cities in New Mexico that run the show. And I'm just waiting for some Santa Fe teacher, or some teacher in general, because this type of thing infects teachers. Once they see it's acceptable or that it's cool, other teachers adopt that. Teachers are kind of weird in that I've known, after working with them for 13 years, you get to know that they're very much in line with fads. And if there is something that they stand out on or stand against, they usually don't protest. They usually don't, they toe the line, is what I'm trying to get to. And it even goes to administrators. And that's where I had to kind of finally step away and start looking, try to open my business, which doesn't seem like it's going to work too well. So I'm looking for work now. And I have no doubt I'll find something. It's just I hope it's soon, and then I hope it's enough to keep me afloat in the time that I need to be afloat while I get other things in line. But it makes me think about how messed up this state is that we, and the state of the country is what I'm getting at, more so than just the state. We're seeing people literally melting down over a little yellow patch because they're assuming this is an attack on people, and it's not. It's a simple statement that, I will not be pushed around. And for a 12-year-old kid to have that tells me that his parents or his grandparents or his friends have all adopted some of these tenets. And it makes me proud in one way, but it also makes me worried that these poor kids are being persecuted in school because all they wanted to do was get an education. This kid went to school like he normally would on any day just to do what he was supposed to do. And this teacher threw a monkey wrench in it. And I wonder how many more times this has to happen and how many more times we have to have parents go in and say, no, enough's enough. I used to be a big advocate for public schools. I'm now more of the volition that public schools are probably not what needs to happen. If I had the funding, unlimited funding, I'd probably open my own mobile school. And what I mean by mobile schools, I'd go find some of these teachers that I know are excellent teachers. And I would take them and I would start doing pod learning. So if you don't know what a pod is, kids go to a pod, a classroom basically, at someone's house. And for a set amount of time, they get access to really highly qualified teachers that can really show them what they need to do for their homeschooling experience. And could you imagine the impact that would have? New Mexico's still trying to figure out where all the kids went after COVID because enrollment's still down across the state. Well, I think we know what happened. I saw firsthand what they were trying to show in the classroom, or saw the level of engagement that my kids were getting with remote learning, and realizing that wasn't servicing them. I've tried to get my youngest son out of school, but he likes going for the welding classes. And I can't fault him for that. Because he sees that as a future for himself, something he wants to do as a living. And it keeps him engaged and it keeps him passionate. But he's not doing great in the other subjects. And the reason why is, look at the teachers. I used to consider these teachers my colleagues, my friends. And I still do to some extent. There's a lot of good ones that are still in the organization that I left. But I think what's telling is that they're getting brainwashed by their peers into agreeing with the same type of bullcrap that this teacher had a problem with. And it won't be long before you hear of something stupid in the classroom again and somewhere, and you're going to have to pipe up and say enough's enough. There's been a rumor that was going around where there was supposedly a litter box at one of the schools. I don't know if the litter box was actually a thing, but I know that there was a survey to go make sure that it was, that there wasn't one in the bathrooms. I do know that one of the most woke books, This Book is Gay, I believe is what it was, or the other one, there's a couple of them. I remember seeing one of them on a couple different teachers' desks as I was doing my job. And the cherry on the top for me is I know that it wasn't the straw that broke the back for me was trying to change something that a database basically that we had, or I and several of my peers before me and working with me at the time had perfected its integration to make applications work for kids. But what really got me was a conversation I had 2 weeks before where I was told to let tune software to watch what kids were saying. And we had already had a shooting in an Aztec, and I've talked about this on this podcast several times. But I know for a fact at least 7 kids that I helped by listening in on their conversation, on their chats, reading their chats, and getting context, because you can't tell you how many times I saw a kid say this, I'm dead, versus I think I'm going to kill myself. But I had the ability back then to redirect administrators and get those kids specifically help. And I did that several times. And for my new boss, not my superintendent, but my new person that was put in charge of me, for him to come out and say, just tune the software, you're wasting too much time doing that, was something that I had issue with. And I toiled with that and I prayed on that a lot. And when the last thing, the database thing came up, I was like, I think I'm done here. I need need to leave for my own mental health. And I think that these little things that keep happening in schools, now it's the Gadsden flag. We're hearing about time and time again kids transitioning without parents knowing. And I have no doubt that's happening in New Mexico schools. I don't know if it's happening where I used to work. I have no evidence of that, but I wouldn't be surprised. And that's because this type of mind virus, like I said, infects teachers. All of them. It starts with one, and then it becomes contagious, and it infects them all. And before long, it infects administrators. Now, I still maintain I worked with some of the best administrators on planet Earth, and I miss them the most. I miss a couple principals that were just exceptional in every way. And I think they were ducking and covering because they could see this stuff coming down the pipe, and they were biding their time before they either retired or they found a new job. I just am stubborn enough to where that didn't work for me, and I had to do it on my own terms. So I would tell you, as being a 2A member, being a parent, one of the most important things you can do is spread the 2A and spread our ideology, indoctrinate your kids, so to speak, in being good American citizens. And that this stuff that's happening in the schools, they need to be able to tell you, and you need to actually look at it. Now you need to know if the kid's being a turd or not, and then just making stuff up. But you need to be able to understand if this is a real thing, that something needs to be done. Because the one thing I know about working in schools is that if parents speak in a loud voice, mountains get moved and people do things. After the shooting in Aztec, they got armed guards. Fast forward a little bit later, they got a resource officer that was daily going into every school. They now have a security group. Paul Tim, someone I talked about a while back. I went to one of his talks, and he said actions are only taken after loss. It's a damn shame we lost 2 people. But that's not because of us that were working that day. It's because stupid people do stupid things. And mentally disturbed people will find a way to hurt people. And if you start seeing this mental mind virus infiltrate your schools, speak up. Like, share, subscribe, be great.